Welcome to the SAU Report. I'm Brandy Bierbaum.
And I'm Amber Goodwin. With us today we have Michael Goodwin, who has been actively involved with the Hurricane Katrina efforts here in Magnolia.
Mr. Goodwin, thank you for being our guest. Could you tell us a little bit about your job?
Well, I am the Associate Director for Evangelistic International Ministry, which is a humanitarian, faith-based aid and relief organization based here in Magnolia, Arkansas.
Okay, so what did you do that concerning the victims of Katrina?
Well, it was the Monday morning, I believe it was the 29th, August 29th, I got a call from our county judge, Judge John Blair, and knowing that we had been involved in humanitarian aid and relief activities around the world. We work in about 9 countries with feeding programs, and we have a hospital in Honduras. He asked if we could help, that there were evacuees that had arrived in Magnolia, and that we needed to address the issue and see how we were going to handle the issue. And so he asked if we would be willing to come in and work with the county and city government and trying to set up aid and relief for the evacuees that arrived here.
Do you think that Magnolia was prepared to handle an emergency of this size?
I think it was. I really believe that Judge Blair and Larry Taylor, who is with the emergency management, he is the director of emergency management here in Columbia County. They were more than prepared to set up and be able to react in a expeditious way, trying to help the evacuees.
Give us details on what you exactly did to help the people who came.
Well, it was Monday the 29th. We realized that we had over 600 evacuees at that time here in Magnolia. And as I said, Judge Blair contacted myself and Mr. Larry Taylor, and we began to sit down and try to figure out how we were going to handle the influx of this number. And so we got together on Tuesday with the Director of Human Services, Rodney, also with the Director of the Department of Health, Melinda Harrell, and Larry Taylor and Judge Blair and Beverly Thomas, who is Judge Blair's assistant. And we began to try to figure out how we were going to handle this. And so on Wednesday, we called a town hall meeting, and it was held at the Fellowship Hall of First Baptist Church. And all of those that would be interested in helping, we invited them to participate. And we probably had 200 there in that meeting, wanting to know what to do, what we were going to do, and how we could do it. In that meeting was representatives from the industry here in town, as well as all of the banks were here. SAU was involved in the initial meeting, and other volunteers just throughout the city. We had a town hall meeting. We began to put together a plan. We set up bank accounts in all 5 of the banks here in town under our ministry, because Evangelistic International Ministry is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so all contributions are tax deductible. So we needed an entity to be able to set up with the bank, so we took the lead in that, and so that there were a lot of people that wanted to donate funds immediately. So we set that up to begin to take in funds, and then we began to put people, volunteers, in charge of different aspects of our aid and relief efforts. John and Jan White, they were coordinators of our aid and relief efforts, and we set up in the bus garage at First Baptist Church, and we began to ask for donations of food and clothing and toiletry items, hygiene items, and water. And so we put them in charge of that. Les and Valerie Kent, they volunteered to coordinate the feeding efforts and began to set up schedules to be able to feed our evacuees. And then we met with the local bank and also the industry and began to put plans in place to be able to help.
Okay, how did you reach the people when they came into town? How did you guys, how did you communicate with the victims?
That was very difficult. We really, as I said, Monday night we fed 600. over 600. On Tuesday night, we fed between 450 and 500. So it was real hard to get the word out and to try to identify exactly how many evacuees we had in Magnolia. We have estimated during that first week that we could have had up to 1,000 evacuees here in Magnolia. They were at the hotel. Some were beginning to filter into SAU. We had people that had come in and were staying with relatives. And so an all-out effort went. On Wednesday afternoon, we tried to gather all the evacuees at the auditorium of First Baptist Church so that we could identify them and get them here. And Mary Wilson and Ronnie Talley of the Red Cross, they were at that meeting because we needed to begin to register them so that we would have a head count of how many were here. I believe that that day there was probably only 250. So an all-out effort then began to try to identify all of the evacuees. That Saturday and Sunday, we opened up City Hall, and Debbie Chadlane sort of spearheaded that, and we tried to get the word out on the radio stations and on the TV and the newspaper and the banner news to get the word out that we needed to register, we need to assess their needs, and see what they were needing.
Okay.
So, Mr. Goodwin, we have a lot of excess things now that a lot of these evacuees have gone their separate ways. What are those plans to do with the bus garage being full of stuff and things, the food and things like that? Are y'all going to distribute them to other places that need them? Are you going to keep it here just in case another emergency happens? What exactly are the plans with that?
Well, we really haven't decided yet what we're going to do with the items that we're collecting. And let me add here that Magnolia, Columbia County, it was amazing at the outpouring of giving that they did here. It was astounding to see all of the items that were brought in, the water, the food, the clothes. We filled the First Baptist Church bus garage. If you want to know how large that is, just drive by Union Street and look at it. It was absolutely just packed. And what we were able to do then, once we filled that, we were able then to allow the evacuees that were here to go in and get clothes. Most of them only left their homes with a small suitcase or a backpack, with whatever they could get in their vehicle. So they arrived here. They needed clothes. They needed money. They needed some of the essentials, hygiene items that they didn't have. We had small children who needed diapers and baby food, and the outpouring of the community was absolutely amazing. Within the first 5 days, we had over $50,000 contributed to the effort. So with that, we were able then to buy things and to give them money that they might need to buy gas or just to live on. So many here, pretty soon it became very evident to us that their funds would not hold up forever. And part of the problem was the whole banking system down on the Gulf had been closed, and there was no way for them to get their money. They may have money in the banks, but there was no way to get the money. And so there were a lot of people there that had tremendous needs financially. And so with the money that had come in, we were able to help just hundreds of individuals by just giving them cold hard cash to help them get through this. And then we opened up the bus barn, and they were able to go through, pick out their clothes, and let me add, Jan and John White did an absolutely tremendous job, and all the volunteers that worked at the bus garage, they sized all of the clothes so that when you came in, you knew, if you knew your size, you knew right where to go. They had it so well organized. And so we were able to offer that to our evacuees that were here in Magnolia. Now, after the first week, then we began to think about trying to help those on the Gulf Coast. And it was obvious, and I made some phone calls, and it was obvious to me, talking to some other humanitarian aid and relief organizations that we have worked with and we know of, that they were unable to get into New Orleans. So we decided that we would go into Mississippi and help those on the Gulf. And so the first week, after the first week, that following Wednesday, we had a 53-foot tractor trailer rig, and the trailer was donated or given to us by Fowler Trucking. And then Thurl Story Well Service then provided a tractor and driver, and we loaded it down with clothes and food and water, and we went to Saucier, Mississippi, which was about 10 miles from Gulfport, and was able to distribute those items at a local church in Gulfport.
So Magnolia's helped out in many ways.
Oh yeah, it is. It's been amazing. We've sent out 2 trucks now. The first one was going to Saucier, Mississippi, and then the week following we took another truck down to Columbia, Mississippi, which is on the southwest part of the state. And it's a rural area, just as Saucier was a rural area. And what we found was a lot of the aid and relief was going right to Gulfport, Biloxi, you know, the big city areas. And a lot of the rural areas, such as Magnolia,
right,
were being left out. And they weren't getting the aid and relief as they needed, and as quick, because 2 weeks after the fact, the rural areas still didn't have electricity, still didn't have water. And so, and those would be the last ones, you know, that would
right,
that would benefit from having their electricity and water. So we were able to go into those communities and help out the rural areas, because I know how it would be for us in Magnolia, just like we experienced in the ice storm that we had several years ago or a few years back. So we were able to go in and really help and be a blessing to. I don't know how many hundreds of folks that we were able to help, but it was really exciting to be able to go down there and see the appreciation and the outpouring of love and appreciation that they gave us when they saw us coming.
Well, I know that a lot of SAU organizations did a lot of clothing drives and food drives to help support this effort, but I also have heard that we had refugees, the evacuees themselves, helping to give to families that were in need just like them. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience you had with the Ackermans?
Rodney and Diane Ackerman were just a joy. They came up from Diamond Head, Mississippi, and they left. They evacuated here, and they ended up in Magnolia. How you would have to hear their story, but it was a neat story on how they ended up here in Magnolia, and they just jumped in and they began to help, and Diane worked with Jan White in the bus garage and with the aid and relief items and helped her organize that. They worked tirelessly every day, 10, 12 hours a day. Rodney helped us in the judge's office, and he became our PR man. He began to send out all press releases and take what we needed the radio stations to know and what we needed them to put out. He began to take care of all of that for us. And they just became a very special couple to Magnolia. Matter of fact, they just left yesterday. So they spent 3 weeks here, and they did not want to leave until they had helped all the evacuees here. And it was exciting to see how much they cared and how much they fell in love with Magnolia and Columbia County as a whole.
That's amazing. Were the victims that were here, did they come and ask for things, or was it hard to kind of, to find out the ones who needed money, or?
You had both. You had some that, they would approach and say, hey, I need help, and we would evaluate what they needed. Judge Blair and Beverly Thomas and myself, we would evaluate their needs and help them according to their needs. And then there were others that we did have to seek out. We knew that we would, hear the rumor mill, and there would be a family, that we were told that needed some help, but they didn't want to ask, and so we would go to them. And story after story of those that we helped that needed help, and that were so thankful when we were able to give them the help that they needed.
I might be wrong on this, but wasn't there doctors who even offered free medical attention or cheap or discounted process to some of the people who came in with illnesses that they needed attention for?
There were so many involved in offering so many services. There very well could have been. I know there's probably a couple of dentists that gave some help to some individuals. We had one evacuee here that she had leukemia and she had to be tested each week, and she was due for a bone marrow transplant next year. So she required a lot of medical attention, and Melinda Harrell at the Department of Health, she just did a great job assessing the medical needs and finding them the proper help and where they could go and offering them the things that they needed.
So, being the Associate Director of Evangelistic International Ministries, do you feel like that profession helped prepare you for the work that you had to do in your own town?
Oh, most definitely. For the last several years, we've traveled to third world countries, and we've helped in feeding the poorest of the poor, the hungry of the hungriest. We've given medical attention to those that desperately need it. We've seen poverty at its worst. And I think it did help prepare for something like this. Once I arrived, the team arrived down in Gulfport, Saucier, Mississippi. Nothing could prepare you for the devastation that you saw. As much as I've seen around the world, I've never seen anything to compare to the devastation that we experienced and got to see firsthand down on the Gulf. It looked like a bomb had gone off, and what you saw on TV didn't do it justice. It was horrible. But I think being involved in humanitarian aid and relief has prepared us to be able to help. We were just a small part. We just tried to do and fill in the gaps that were needed. There were so many people that were involved. Thank yous. There's so many, and I almost am afraid to even start saying thank you, because you certainly don't want to offend anyone or think that you're being left out. All the churches. Let me say here, this was the first time that I've seen all the churches, all denominations, all faith come together in a way like they did this time. It was absolutely amazing to see all of the faith-based institutions and denominations coming together for one common cause, and that was to reach out to people. The industries, Alcoa, Albemarle, SMI, they were tremendous. The workers at Alcoa, they were to have an awards dinner for safety, a steak dinner. And the employees on the floor, the hourly employees, gave up that steak dinner and donated that money that they could have had for steaks. They donated that money for the Katrina aid and relief effort. So, Alcoa, we were recipients of a $10,000 check from Alcoa Corporation. SMI and Albemarle both just volunteered and helped and donated money and gas cards and Walmart gift cards. All of the banks have been just tremendous. All 5 banks, People's Banks, Summit Bank, Farmers Bank, Bancorp South, Carter Federal, they've all played an active and good role in helping. KZHE played a big role in getting the word out and helping to raise money and helping. They even fed on Thursday night, I believe, Thursday or Friday night of the first week. They even fed all of the evacuees there at Union Street Station. The Banner News was helpful in getting the word out. There's so many that played a big part. The hotels did a good job of working with the evacuees and helping them and trying to give them the things that they needed. There's just been an outpouring of love and help that I think people around the state and people around the nation could learn from Magnolia and Columbia County. I really believe that. When they look at our emergency operating plan and how we followed our emergency operating plan, and to see how Judge Blair handled this and how he implemented the emergency plan, and how he brought everyone together. There's a lot that could be learned, because it was not handled this well in other counties throughout the state.
Right.
Neither did they get the support from the community that we got. So this has just been great. And I want to thank SAU, Dr. Allen and Dr. Rankin, by opening up SAU and opening up one of the dormitories to allow evacuees a place to sleep and to shower, and then to feed them 3 meals a day. That was just amazing. And we thank SAU for being an integral part of what we've tried to do. Over the next few weeks, there will be some other needs that will need to be addressed. We have the money that we will be able to help with some of the needs in Louisiana as well as Mississippi. We set up a board of directors, and those boards include representatives from Albemarle, Alcoa, and SMI, a member from each of the banks, a representative from SAU, and we've set up a board of directors to help give us guidance on how we need to spend the money and where it needs to go. And so there's a lot of work to do with the approaching Hurricane Rita coming. There's still a lot more to do. We just had an influx of evacuees here in Magnolia. We don't know yet how many. All we know is all the hotels are full, and SAU is full.
SAU, this is for Hurricane Rita.
This is for
SAU
Hurricane.
and the hotels are full with
Are
new
full.
evacuees.
With new evacuees. We had probably 40, I believe, left from Hurricane Katrina. And now we're right back to where we were 3 weeks ago. So it's not stopped, and we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Okay, how many are being housed right now at SAU?
I believe there's 106.
And this is with Rita?
This
Hurricane Rita.
is with Hurricane Rita. Yes, ma'am.
Were there any left from still housed at SAU?
I believe there were a couple of families.
Okay.
I believe there were a couple of families left.
Okay.
Well, we thank you for being with us today and being our guest here at SAU. And I'm Brandy Bierbaum.
And I'm Amber Goodwin.